In the dusty streets of first-century Judea, the ordinary clatter of daily life often went unnoticed, yet it held a story that echoes across millennia. Imagine a carpenter's calloused hands shaping wood, the blacksmith's hammer ringing against metal, or a potter's wheel spinning in rhythm with the heartbeat of a small Galilean village. These were not the tools of kings or prophets, yet in their simplicity they bore witness to the extraordinary life unfolding around them, the life of Jesus of Nazareth. What did it mean, then, to walk among people who were shaping history with their hands, often unaware that the ordinary might carry the divine? Everywhere you look in the Gospels, from the marketplaces to the hillsides, there are glimpses of everyday labor. Jesus spoke in parables that referenced these humble trades: workers sowing seeds, fishermen mending nets, builders laying foundations. The tools they used were not merely instruments, they were extensions of their very existence, practical, worn, and essential. In a time without electricity, motors, or machinery, survival depended on skill, endurance, and a certain intimacy with the objects of one's labor. A chisel, a rope, a simple plow, these were the silent companions of life, shaping both the land and the lives of those who worked it. Yet these implements tell a story far deeper than function. They reveal the rhythm of daily existence in a land layered with tension, hope, and prophecy. Some scholars suggest that a carpenter's hammer, for example, might have been passed down through generations, its handle worn smooth by decades of use. A fisherman's net, patched countless times, carried not just fish but the weight of families depending on its catch. Each tool, in its ordinary presence, becomes a testament to perseverance, creativity, and faith lived in practical, tangible ways. And it is here, among the mundane, that we find the sacred intertwined with the ordinary. Consider for a moment the carpenter Jesus himself. Raised in Nazareth, he would have known the grain of wood, the smell of sawdust, the resistance of a stubborn plank. These were not abstract concepts, they were lessons etched into his hands. To touch wood, to measure, to shape and fit, these acts demanded patience, precision, and humility. They were lessons in attentiveness to the world and the work that sustains life. And in these everyday tasks, perhaps, Jesus' teachings were forged, not only in words, but in the very rhythm of labor, echoing a truth often overlooked. The divine is not only found in miracles and sermons, but also in the work of human hands, faithfully applied. The streets of Nazareth, bustling with people and animals, would have been alive with these signs of ordinary life. Markets overflowed with produce, fabrics, and pottery, all products of hands skilled in their trades. The smell of freshly baked bread mingled with the dust of the roads, and children played near the wells while parents negotiated the day's needs. In this world, tools were not just practical, they were communal, connecting families, neighbors, and the very pulse of society. Each person's labor contributed to the survival and flourishing of the village, shaping more than objects. It shaped the culture, the economy, and the relationships that bound people together. It is easy to read the Gospels and imagine only the extraordinary, miracles, teachings, and confrontations with the powerful. But beneath the dramatic moments lies a foundation of the ordinary, the daily toil that framed every encounter. A fisherman mending nets by the Sea of Galilee, a shepherd tending sheep on the hills, a potter shaping clay by the riverbank. These scenes offer us a window into the practical realities that defined life in Jesus' time. And through them, we glimpse the quiet faithfulness required to live fully, to love neighbors, and to prepare hearts for the message that would change the world. Yet there is a question that lingers. How often do we, centuries removed from these dusty streets and simple tools, recognize the sacred in the everyday? How often do we overlook the hands that labor, the tools that endure, and the quiet, steady rhythms that sustain life? The story of Jesus is inseparable from the ordinary life he inhabited. To understand him, we must see the world through the eyes of those who lived it, hands deep in wood and clay, hearts immersed in work and devotion. And so, as we begin this journey, we will follow the echoes of those tools, the hammers, plows, and nets that shape not only livelihoods, but the very environment in which the greatest story of all unfolded. We will uncover the textures, smells, and sounds of daily life, and in doing so, discover how the mundane reveals the extraordinary. There is a lesson here, subtle yet profound. Every tool tells a story, and every hand that wields it carries a history that can illuminate our own lives. If this stirs a curiosity within you, consider leaving a word below, sharing your thoughts on how ordinary life might still hold extraordinary significance. In the coming moments, we will trace these lost tools, exploring the hands that built the world Jesus walked, and in their echoes, perhaps, we will find a reflection of our own labor, faith, and purpose. Here, at the crossroads of the mundane and the divine, our journey begins. The sun rises over Galilee, casting a golden light across the fields where farmers have already begun their labor. The air is thick with dust, and the scent of olive oil and baked bread, a reminder that life in Jesus' time was intimately tied to the land and its yields. Each tool in the hands of these everyday workers carried a dual purpose. It was both practical and symbolic, shaping not only material goods, but also the very culture and faith of the people. The carpenter's plane, the shepherd's staff, the fisherman's net, each told a story of endurance, creativity, and devotion, quietly framing the world in which Jesus lived and taught. Take, for instance, the fishermen along the Sea of Galilee. Their nets were carefully woven, weighted with stones, and repaired after every catch. They knew the rhythms of the water, the flight of birds signaling fish below, and the subtle shifts in wind and tide. Jesus called some of these men, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, to follow him, and it was their daily labor that became the stage for their transformation. Their tools, once instruments of sustenance, now carried a new significance. The nets they had cast and mended for years became symbols of discipleship, reminders that ordinary work could intersect with divine purpose. It is a striking thought. The very hands accustomed to toil were called to witness miracles, to fish for souls rather than fish for bread. Meanwhile, in villages tucked into the hills, potters molded clay into vessels that would carry water, wine, or oil. Their hands pressed and turned the raw material, coaxing shape and function from earth itself. Scholars suggest that potters' studios were often modest spaces, yet filled with the hum of daily life, apprentices learning from masters, the fire of kilns glowing in the evenings, and families relying on the fruits of this craft. In the Gospel of Matthew, when Jesus uses the image of the potter, it is not a distant metaphor but a reflection of lived experience. The shaping of clay mirrors the shaping of hearts, a truth that resonates beyond centuries, connecting ordinary labor with divine artistry. The carpenter's workshop in Nazareth was another locus of this sacred ordinary. Here, wood was transformed into tables, beams, and everyday tools. The grain of each plank demanded attention. The knots resisted carelessly applied force. A carpenter's hands learned patience, precision, and respect for the material itself. Some scholars suggest that Jesus, in his early years, would have absorbed these lessons not only in skill, but in character. He saw the value in diligence, the beauty in proportion, and the necessity of integrity in craftsmanship. These insights, grounded in daily work, would later surface in his teachings, parables that spoke to laborers, farmers, and homemakers alike, resonating with the lives of ordinary people. Even the smallest implements carried meaning. A shepherd's staff, carved from a single branch, guided flocks through rocky terrain, warded off predators, and offered balance on treacherous paths. In the hills surrounding Bethlehem and Galilee, such tools were indispensable. Yet they also became symbols of guidance and protection, imagery Jesus would later employ to describe his care for humanity. The ordinary object, a piece of wood, a simple rope, was elevated into a metaphor for divine truth. It is a subtle reminder that the world of first-century laborers was not merely practical, it was profoundly moral and spiritual, intertwined with the rhythms of faith and community. Markets in towns like Capernaum or Bethsaida reveal another layer of daily life. Merchants displayed baskets of figs, pottery jars, and woven textiles. Buyers haggled, voices overlapping with the bray of donkeys and the clatter of cartwheels on stone streets. The tools of trade, scales, knives, measuring cords, were extensions of human interaction, governing fairness, honesty, and diligence. In this context, Jesus' teachings about integrity, provision, and justice found tangible grounding. Every interaction, every tool employed in honest work became a vessel for moral and spiritual instruction, embedding divine principles into everyday activity. What is remarkable, looking through the lens of history, is how these ordinary implements also preserved cultural memory. The blacksmith's anvil, the threshing sledge, the wine press, they were not just functional objects but markers of continuity, linking generations. Families passed down techniques, secrets of their craft, and even the tools themselves shaping a shared identity anchored in labor. In this light, the story of Jesus intersects not only with spiritual history, but with human continuity. He walked in a world shaped by the cumulative effort of countless hands, and his message spoke to people who understood the sacredness of work, however humble or hidden it might have seemed. By tracing these lost tools, we begin to see a mosaic of daily life where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist. Each hammer stroke, each net cast, each pot turned on a wheel carried the weight of survival, community, and faith. The gospel narratives, when read with this awareness, come alive with texture and depth. Jesus' teachings were not abstract, they were woven into the very fabric of existence, visible in the sweat of laborers, the worn handles of implements, and the rhythm of daily routines. And so, the ordinary reveals itself as extraordinary. The tools of Jesus' time, though lost to the modern eye, continue to speak across centuries. They remind us that divine purpose often moves quietly through hands that work, minds that plan, and hearts that endure. The lessons are tangible. Faith can be practiced in labor, patience learned in skill, and devotion expressed through diligence. These are not relics of the past. They are principles embedded in the rhythm of human life, waiting to be rediscovered. If this glimpse into the everyday life of Jesus' world resonates, share your reflection below. Consider how the tools and tasks you encounter daily might carry deeper meaning, and how your own labor can intersect with something far greater than mere survival. As we step out of the dusty streets of first-century Judea and into our modern lives, the lesson of the lost tools becomes surprisingly personal. The carpenter's plane, the fisherman's net, the shepherd's staff, these were more than objects. They were conduits of purpose, patience, and presence. And though we do not labor with hand-hewn plows or kilns fired by wood, the essence of their work echoes in ours. Every task, no matter how mundane, carries the potential to shape character, community, and faith, just as the tools of Jesus' time shaped bodies, livelihoods, and hearts. Take a moment to consider your own daily life. Perhaps it is a desk job, a classroom, a kitchen, or a workshop. The instruments you use, computer, pen, broom, ladle, are your own lost tools of the Holy Land, humble yet full of meaning. They may not be carved from olive wood or wrought iron, yet in the rhythm of your labor there is the same opportunity to cultivate diligence, patience, and care. Just as the potter pressed clay to form vessels for daily use, your hands mold the reality of your family, workplace, or community. The question is this: are you aware of the sacred dimension present in ordinary effort? The carpenter in Nazareth understood this naturally. Each cut of the chisel required precision, each joint demanded attention. It was work, yes, but it was also a discipline of the soul, an exercise in attentiveness and integrity. Similarly, when we approach our tasks with focus and respect, we are practicing a form of devotion. There is spiritual value in faithfully completing small duties, honoring the materials, the process, and the people who will benefit from our labor. In essence, the mundane becomes a canvas for grace, waiting for our conscious engagement. Consider the fisherman casting nets into Galilee's waters. For hours, sometimes days, he labored without certainty of success. Yet through persistence, observation, and knowledge, he provided for his family. Today, we face our own versions of uncertainty. Deadlines, responsibilities, financial pressures, relational challenges. The lesson here is timeless. Steadfastness in the ordinary cultivates resilience, wisdom, and trust. The act of showing up, of performing small, repeated actions with care, is a sacred discipline in itself. It mirrors the rhythm of God's faithfulness, reminding us that enduring outcomes often begin with consistent, humble effort. Even the shepherd's staff carries a profound modern lesson. Its purpose was guidance and protection, a tool that symbolized oversight and care. In contemporary life, our staffs may be the ways we lead, nurture, or protect those around us, our families, teams, or communities. They are instruments not just of work, but of responsibility, empathy, and moral stewardship. Observing the shepherd in the hills, we see that guidance requires patience, attentiveness, and courage, qualities that remain just as necessary for us today as they were in the hills of Galilee. There is also a subtle lesson in the very wear of these tools. Worn handles, patched nets, scarred wood, each imperfection tells a story. They speak of repeated effort, of trials, and of perseverance. Modern life, though often shielded from the raw physicality of ancient labor, is no less demanding. Challenges leave marks, and our tools, whether literal or metaphorical, bear the history of our effort. Recognizing this encourages gratitude for our own labor and the opportunity to shape the world around us, even in small, often unnoticed ways. Furthermore, ordinary work is a bridge to community. The blacksmith's forge, the potter's studio, the marketplace, all were places where skill served not only oneself, but neighbors and families. In today's context, our efforts ripple outward. A well-prepared meal, a thoughtfully completed project, a timely act of support for a friend or colleague. Just as tools in Jesus' time facilitated connection and sustenance, our daily actions foster relationships, trust, and social cohesion. Each act, though small, contributes to a larger story, one in which human hands, hearts, and minds participate in a shared narrative of purpose. Perhaps the most profound takeaway is this: God's presence is found not only in extraordinary miracles, but in faithful labor. When Jesus spoke of sowing seeds, mending nets, or guiding flocks, he elevated ordinary work to a spiritual metaphor. Today, as we face our own routines and responsibilities, the same principle applies. Our hands, minds, and hearts are instruments through which faith, love, and integrity can be expressed. The lost tools of the Holy Land remind us that the divine is present in the ordinary, accessible through attentiveness, patience, and purposeful effort. So what might it look like to reclaim this perspective in your own life? It could be approaching tasks with intentionality, seeing beyond efficiency to the craft and care embedded in every action. It might mean noticing how your work impacts others and acknowledging the hidden sanctity in routine. Perhaps it is pausing to reflect, even briefly, on the ways ordinary labor can echo divine creativity and faithful persistence. In doing so, you join a lineage that stretches back to Nazareth, Capernaum, and the hillsides of Judea, a lineage in which everyday tools carried extraordinary lessons. If this reflection resonates, consider sharing your thoughts or experiences below. How might your own tools of daily life, whether literal or metaphorical, serve as conduits of purpose, faith, and transformation? By engaging with this question, we participate in a living conversation that spans centuries, connecting our hands and hearts to the labor and lessons of those who walked with Jesus. Even with the insights gained from the tools of Jesus' time, a shadow persists, doubt, resistance, and the quiet weight of hesitation that can seep into every human heart. We admire the diligence of the carpenter, the patience of the fisherman, the vigilance of the shepherd, but when it comes to our own lives, the path is often less clear. Fear of failure, distraction, and the pressure of modern busyness can obscure the sacredness of daily labor. We may feel unskilled, overwhelmed, or uncertain of our purpose, wondering if the ordinary work we perform truly matters. Yet it is precisely here, in the tension between doubt and devotion, that faith must find its foothold. Consider the carpenter, hands worn and splintered, aware that one careless cut could ruin the piece he has been shaping. How often do we approach our own work with the same vulnerability, knowing that mistakes carry consequences? Modern tools, emails, deadlines, financial obligations, bring their own pressures, and yet they are no less arenas for cultivating patience, precision, and integrity. The temptation is to rush, to seek shortcuts, to minimize effort in the hope of avoiding discomfort. But the lesson of the lost tools is that faith is forged in persistence, in the willingness to engage deeply with the process, even when the outcome is uncertain. The fisherman, casting nets into waters that may yield nothing, faced long hours of uncertainty. Modern life offers its own seas of unpredictability, relationships that falter, opportunities that vanish, unforeseen challenges that test resolve. Doubt can creep in, whispering that effort is futile, that ordinary labor is insignificant. Yet the gospel reminds us that the ordinary is often the vessel through which extraordinary outcomes are realized. A net cast faithfully may be empty for hours, but the skill, observation, and patience cultivated in that time prepare the fisherman for the catch that matters most. Likewise, our persistent, faithful effort can sow unseen seeds of growth, transformation, and grace. Fear is another obstacle. The shepherd guarding his flock in rugged hills knows the risk of predators, the responsibility of vigilance, and the anxiety that comes with responsibility. In our lives, fears manifest differently but no less powerfully. Fear of judgment, of inadequacy, of failing those who rely on us. It is tempting to shrink from responsibility, to disengage from work that feels too heavy or too inconsequential. Yet the shepherd's staff teaches a counterintuitive truth. Courage and care are cultivated precisely through engagement, not avoidance. Faith does not remove danger or uncertainty. It equips us to navigate it with attentiveness, compassion, and steady resolve. Another subtle adversary is comparison. In the markets of Galilee, no two tools or crafts were exactly alike, yet each served its purpose. Today, social media, workplace competition, and cultural pressures can distort our perception, tempting us to devalue our unique contribution. We see others' successes or resources and measure ourselves against them, forgetting that our own labor, however humble, carries intrinsic worth and purpose. The carpenter's worn plane and the shepherd's patched staff were not less valuable because they were ordinary. They were effective, necessary, and imbued with skill and intention. Likewise, our work gains significance not from external applause, but from faithfulness, care, and the conscious choice to act with integrity. Even the most faithful can encounter burnout or spiritual dryness. Repetitive tasks, seemingly trivial responsibilities, and the daily grind can numb the sense of meaning. Yet the lost tools of the Holy Land remind us that the divine is not always revealed in grand gestures. Instead, it resides in consistency, attention, and devotion over time. Just as the potter repeatedly presses clay into form, shaping vessels slowly, our small acts accumulate significance. They mold character, sustain communities, and prepare hearts to receive and recognize God's presence. The challenge is to remain mindful, engaged, and willing to invest energy into ordinary rhythms that are, in truth, sacred. So how do we confront these obstacles? Begin by embracing patience and presence. Recognize that every task, every interaction, every moment of effort is an opportunity to participate in something larger than ourselves. Resist the lure of comparison, acknowledging that your unique contribution has meaning. Accept that uncertainty and fear are part of the process, and rather than avoiding them, use them to cultivate perseverance, humility, and trust. And finally, remember that labor, even when unseen or unrecognized, can be an act of devotion, a silent offering of faith through diligence, care, and attention to detail. The lost tools of Jesus' time were ordinary instruments wielded with care, persistence, and skill. They remind us that obstacles, doubt, fear, distraction, comparison, and weariness do not diminish the value of our labor. Instead, these challenges provide the canvas on which faith, patience, and integrity are painted. Just as the carpenter's hands, the fisherman's net, and the shepherd's staff carried both practical and spiritual weight, so too do our own efforts hold the potential for profound impact, both seen and unseen. If you are wrestling with uncertainty or the weight of daily tasks, take a moment to reflect on how your own tools might carry purpose beyond what you immediately perceive. Stay with the process. Engage faithfully, and allow even the smallest acts to be vessels of grace. In the ordinary, the extraordinary awaits, if only we have eyes to see and hands willing to work. And then comes the moment of clarity, the subtle unveiling of truth that transforms labor into legacy, routine into revelation. Imagine the carpenter, weary from hours of precise cuts, suddenly stepping back to see the entire table completed, the grain of the wood aligning perfectly, joints snug and true. In that moment, effort, patience, and attention converge, and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. This is the essence of transformation, a reminder that the work of our hands, when performed with faithfulness, carries a ripple effect far beyond what we can see. In the hills and valleys of Galilee, fishermen casting their nets experienced a similar revelation. After long days of toil, when the nets were heavy with the morning catch, they witnessed the tangible fruits of persistence and knowledge, coupled with trust in the unseen. It is a profound metaphor for life. Sometimes the reward is not immediate, and yet the labor is never wasted. Each cast, each careful repair, each patient moment on the water prepares the ground for abundance. And in that abundance, the fisherman sees the culmination of his dedication, the integration of skill, faith, and hope. Consider also the potter, hands stained with clay, shaping vessel after vessel, guided by both instinct and instruction. At the moment the clay yields its final form, the potter recognizes a profound truth. Transformation is rarely instantaneous. The shaping, kneading, and steady pressure, often unseen and repetitive, produce results that endure. Similarly, in our lives, the cumulative effect of small, faithful actions becomes a foundation for personal growth, character development, and meaningful contribution. What feels ordinary, even monotonous, is often the quiet channel through which change and vision are realized. And then there is Jesus himself, walking among his people, observing their labor, teaching with parables drawn from daily life. His message is clear. Transformation is not reserved for the extraordinary. It is embedded in the ordinary. The seeds sown in fields, the nets mended by fishermen, the flocks tended by shepherds, all become instruments of insight, mirrors reflecting divine principles in practical, accessible ways. What may appear as routine or mundane is, in reality, a vessel of revelation, waiting for eyes attuned to see and hands willing to participate. This vision extends to us. In modern life, transformation often begins in seemingly small acts, showing patience in a frustrating situation, exercising care in a repetitive task, extending kindness in interactions that seem inconsequential. These moments, like the daily labor of first-century villagers, carry transformative power. They shape our character, influence those around us, and open pathways for insight that might otherwise remain closed. Faith, expressed through diligence and attention, amplifies these moments, turning ordinary actions into conduits of lasting impact. The carpenter's table, the fisherman's net, the potter's vessel, all illustrate an essential principle. The integration of skill, intention, and faith produces a vision that transcends immediate circumstances. In contemporary life, this principle can guide our approach to work, relationships, and spiritual practice. By aligning effort with purpose, even repetitive or overlooked tasks gain significance. Every action becomes an opportunity to participate in transformation, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of others, and ultimately, within the broader tapestry of divine purpose. There is also the communal aspect of transformation. Just as the tools in Jesus' time connected families, neighbors, and communities, our labor carries relational impact. The teacher who prepares thoughtfully, the parent who invests patiently, the colleague who offers support, each action, when executed with integrity and attention, strengthens the fabric of community. Transformation, therefore, is never isolated. It radiates outward, bridging personal growth with collective well-being. The ordinary labor of today becomes the foundation of a more resilient, compassionate, and faithful world. Reflection deepens when we recognize the spiritual dimension embedded in all of this. The lost tools of the Holy Land remind us that God's work often unfolds quietly, through faithful effort rather than spectacle. Every hour devoted to careful practice, every moment of intentional patience, every small act of devotion participates in a larger divine narrative. The vision of transformation is not only what we create, but also how we engage with the divine through our ordinary routines. In essence, our hands, like those of the carpenter, fisherman, or potter, become instruments of grace, shaping both material and spiritual reality. And so, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The simple acts of work, care, and dedication converge to form a vision that is both practical and prophetic. We begin to see that transformation is not an event, but a process, realized through consistent engagement, faith-infused effort, and attentiveness to the sacred in the everyday. The tools of Jesus' world, though long lost, continue to guide us, teaching that purpose and divine presence are accessible through the faithful exercise of skill, patience, and love. If this vision speaks to you, share it with someone who might need to see the sacred potential in their own daily routines. Let them know that transformation is never beyond reach, that even the humblest acts can shape destiny, illuminate hearts, and reveal the extraordinary within the ordinary. As our journey through the lost tools of the Holy Land comes to its close, we stand once more amid the dust, the sawdust, the spinning wheels, and the nets drying in the sun. The carpenter's hammer, the fisherman's net, the shepherd's staff. Each now resonates beyond its physical purpose, whispering truths that stretch across centuries. They remind us that the divine is not distant or abstract, but intimately woven into the fabric of daily life, accessible through hands willing to work, hearts willing to endure, and eyes willing to see. Look closely at the carpenter's worn hands, the calluses and small scars formed by decades of patient labor. Each mark tells a story of diligence, of obstacles met with resolve, of craft shaped by both skill and devotion. These marks are not just evidence of toil, they are imprints of character, endurance, and faithfulness. In this, we see a reflection of ourselves. Our own lives, though often cluttered with repetitive tasks, obligations, and unseen effort, carry similar potential. Every act of care, every task completed with attention, and every moment of perseverance forms an imprint of purpose, a quiet testament to the sacred woven into the ordinary. The fisherman hauling in his net reminds us that patience and trust are indispensable. Though the waters may be uncertain and the hours long, the faithful application of skill and knowledge brings fruit beyond what is immediately visible. In our modern lives, we face unpredictable circumstances, relationships that challenge us, careers that demand endurance, and personal journeys filled with uncertainty. Yet the principle remains. Faithful persistence transforms effort into abundance, labor into legacy, and the mundane into a mirror of divine provision. Even the shepherd's staff, simple as it seems, carries profound significance. It symbolizes guidance, protection, and vigilance, the qualities we are called to embody in our own lives. Whether leading a family, mentoring a colleague, or offering support to a friend, the everyday tools of responsibility require attentiveness, courage, and compassion. Through such care, the ordinary becomes a channel of influence and grace, shaping not only our own hearts, but the world around us. The lost tools remind us that small acts, consistently applied with love and integrity, ripple outward in ways we may never fully comprehend. There is also the lesson of transformation embedded in repetition. The potter's wheel, turning slowly beneath patient hands, forms vessels that are both functional and beautiful. In our lives, transformation often comes not through grand gestures, but through the disciplined practice of ordinary actions, speaking kindly, working diligently, listening attentively, and living faithfully. Each small act, repeated over time, shapes character, molds relationships, and cultivates a landscape in which faith, hope, and purpose flourish. The divine works quietly in these moments, drawing meaning from the rhythms of routine. As we reflect on these lessons, one truth stands clear: the sacred is never beyond reach. It resides in the tools we use, the work we perform, and the hearts we bring to each task. The lost tools of the Holy Land, though physically absent, speak to us across time, teaching that the extraordinary is inseparable from the ordinary. Faith and purpose are expressed not only in remarkable events, but in consistent, intentional effort. The hands that labor faithfully, the minds that engage with care, and the hearts that persevere reveal the enduring presence of God in human life. So let us carry this vision forward. Let us approach daily tasks with renewed attentiveness, embracing patience, diligence, and integrity. Let us recognize the hidden significance of work that may seem small or routine. Let us honor the ways our own hands, guided by faith, can shape not only objects but lives, communities, and even the world. And let us remember that, as in the time of Jesus, every tool, every effort, every act of care has the potential to bear witness to the divine. If this journey through the ordinary and extraordinary has spoken to you, subscribe to walk further with us. Share these reflections with someone who may need to see the sacred woven into the everyday. Comment to join a conversation that bridges centuries, linking your hands and heart to the labor, faith, and vision of those who walked with Jesus. For in honoring the ordinary, we discover the extraordinary, and in the faithful use of our own tools, we find a path illuminated by grace.